2 American citizens dead, federal agents retreating, senior officials under fire, and Congress demanding answers. What's unfolding in Minnesota is quickly becoming one of the biggest domestic flashpoints of the year, as we've been covering. Over the weekend, 37-year-old Alex Pretti, a licensed ICU nurse working for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, was shot and killed by a U.S. Border Patrol officer in Minneapolis. This was the second fatal shooting by federal immigration officers in the city just weeks after the death of Renee Nicole.
This individual showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
Federal officials say Pretti, who had no criminal record and was legally permitted to carry a firearm, approached agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and resisted disarmament. Videos show Pretti holding his phone and attempting to help others after agents pepper sprayed and pushed a woman. Pretti was declared dead at the scene. According to relatives, Pretti had participated in protests opposing President Donald Trump's immigration policies. His father, Michael Pretti, said his son believed immigration enforcement actions in Minneapolis were unjust and harmful. With 2 narratives being pushed across the country, deep mistrust has been fueled not just in Minnesota, but nationwide.
What I do know is this individual was on that scene several minutes before that shooting, interfering with a lawful, legal, ethical law enforcement operation to arrest Jose Huerta Chuma. And again, it's back to choices. We just talked about choices. When someone makes the choice to come into an active law enforcement scene, interfere, obstruct, delay, or assault law enforcement officers, and they bring a weapon to do that, that is a choice that individual made.
And I speak to all Americans on this over these last 24 hours, what you saw. You're now knowing more about this young man. Beloved by his family, accomplished ICU nurse, skillful in ability to work with veterans, someone who's beloved by community, no criminal record, lawful firearms owner. And you know what you saw. And then you heard the most powerful people in the world, certainly in this country, President, Vice President, Greg Bovino, Kristi Noem, narrate to you what you were looking at, that this was a domestic terrorist, crazed, running at law enforcement with the intent to kill massive numbers of them, sullying his name within minutes of this event happening, and then closing the crime scene, sweeping away the evidence, defying a court order, and not allowing anyone to look at it.
Pretti's death triggered protests across the United States, with demonstrators urging federal enforcement, also known as Operation Metro Surge, to end and demanding accountability from the Trump administration. This operation resulted in more than 3,000 arrests in Minnesota, but also caused clashes with local residents. The state is already reeling from Renee Nicole Good's death, another American citizen who was killed during an ICE raid in Minneapolis.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead.
With Governor Tim Walz publicly calling on President Donald Trump to withdraw federal agents, arguing that the enforcement approach has been aggressive and resulting deaths have been unacceptable.
Enough is enough of this. End this. End this. And we see them moving to Maine. If you're in Boston, you're in Chicago, you're in Philly, you're in Miami, it doesn't matter. We can't live like this. Our children are in trauma. A 5-year-old, you saw the picture, the bunny hat and the Spider-Man. These are not like some narrative to throw around, to parade around in some coat you had made and act like you're a tough guy or whatever. These are people's lives.
And this moment hasn't just drawn reactions from current leaders. Former presidents have also stepped into the conversation, something that doesn't happen often and signals just how significant this has become. Former President Barack Obama released a statement calling Alex Pretti's death deeply troubling, saying incidents like this demand transparency, accountability, and a serious review of federal enforcement practices. Former President Joe Biden also addressed the shooting, saying he was heartbroken by Pretti's death and called for an independent investigation. Biden warned against what he described as overly aggressive enforcement tactics, saying federal authority must always be exercised with restraint and respect for human life. Both former presidents' statements carried a clear message. This moment requires answers and de-escalation. Their involvement adds to the political pressure already building on the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security, especially as protests grew and lawmakers began demanding answers. Already, public backlash has reached federal law enforcement, with Border Patrol Commander Greg Bavino leaving Minneapolis following reports that President Donald Trump wasn't pleased with how he and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem handled the death of Pretti by federal immigration enforcement agents.
Kristi Noem's going to step down.
No, I think she's doing a very good job.
Noem is expected to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee in March due to her conflicting statements about what actually happened in both the Good and Pretti shootings amid calls for her impeachment by Democrats.
Almost 70 members of Congress already from all across the country. Secretary Noem has brought her reign of terror to the Chicagoland area, LA, New Orleans, Charlotte, Durham, and communities north to south to east to west. She needs to be held accountable for her actions. This is why I introduced 3 articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem.
This agency thinks it's above the law. Kristi Noem has treated the Constitution like a suggestion and our communities like a battlefield. I have represented the people of New York for over 30 years. I have seen a lot of presidents, but I have never seen an administration use federal agencies to explicitly punish cities just because they didn't vote for them.
But I want to go further. We have to also impeach Kristi Noem. I want to go further than that. We need to prosecute the criminals en masse. We need to cut and claw back ISIS funding as natural consequences for DHS's disregard for the rule of law and violations of our rights. We have to use every single tool, including the power of the purse, to end the campaign of terror. Because we brought ICE into this world. And we have a responsibility to decide what we do with it after.
President Donald Trump is under intense public pressure in the wake of all of this, saying that he is, quote, reviewing everything.
Well, you know, we're doing a big investigation. I want to see the investigation. I'm going to be watching over it. I want a very honorable and honest investigation. I have to see it myself.
Trump criticized Pretti for carrying a gun during the protests and called out local law enforcement on social media Saturday after the shooting. The president has now shifted Minnesota's immigration enforcement oversight to border czar Tom Homan, who will be in charge of coordinating efforts in the state. Trump spoke with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey on Monday, calling the conversation, quote, very good, with lots of progress being made, with Tom Homan planning to continue that conversation with Frey this week. Frey added on social media that he, quote, appreciated the conversation with Trump and, quote, expressed how much Minneapolis has benefited from our immigrant communities and was clear that my main task is that Operation Metro Surge needs to end. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Homan, quote, will be managing ICE operations on the ground in Minnesota to continue arresting the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens.
Homan will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike.
Frey announced some federal immigration enforcement officers will leave the city as soon as Tuesday following his conversation with Trump, showcasing a rare situation of de-escalation after public pressure and political negotiations. What's unfolding in Minnesota now reaches well beyond one city, one state, or even one tragedy. Federal agents are pulling back, top officials are being questioned, Congress is demanding answers, and all of this is happening as lawmakers head into a tense budget fight. One where funding for immigration enforcement, DHS operations, and oversight could become a flashpoint. Several members of Congress are already signaling that this situation could spill into the appropriations process, raising the possibility of a partial or full government shutdown if demands for accountability aren't met. So what happens next in Minnesota won't stay in Minnesota. It may decide how federal power is exercised, how enforcement is funded, and whether the government itself stays open.